All right, let's take one last look at your traffic and weather for your ride in on this Tuesday morning. A couple of different accidents to report. One at Clemson Hardscrabble, one at Fort Jackson and I-77, one at Trotter and Kaufman, and then one at North Brickyard and Two Notch. Today, your high is 69 degrees, plenty of sunshine. Tomorrow, actually going to get into the mid-70s, high of 75, sunny and breezy. Pretty similar forecast for Thursday as well. It's your traffic and weather from the Wetzel's Automotive Traffic Center here on The Game. Oh, 9 o'clock on your Tuesday morning. Welcome in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Veltri along with you here. Navigating through the week and still obviously unpacking the news of yesterday in reference to, or news of the weekend, I guess, in reference to Mike Shula being relieved as the offensive coordinator for South Carolina. We'll get into plenty of that as the day does go along. I guess I should wish you a happy start of college basketball season, Jack. You'll be back out at CLA tonight to cover the men's team. Women's team in action last night, getting their season started with a victory over Grand Canyon. But, we get kind of lost in the swarm of football season, but basketball's back.
I'm glad to be finally talking about basketball. I was not expecting to be looking this forward to college basketball, but given how football's gone this year and given the expectations, I think there's a lot of excitement now for not just the women's team. There's always hype around the women's team. There's no doubt.
Sure.
But for the men's team specifically, coming off of the year that they had last year, and then to see the performance that they had against NC State, a team that I think is going to be very, very good this year under Will Wade. I think South Carolina got something this year. Got to clean up a few things defensively and got to finish games down the stretch. That was something they struggled with last year, but they're going to be fun to watch this year for sure.
Yeah, so hopefully things go well tonight. Obviously, last year didn't get the season off on the right foot. That loss to what is it? North Florida. That's right. Yeah, North Florida's had a bad reputation against South Carolina for whatever reason, a variety of sports. So you get the season started well against North Carolina A&T tonight, and we'll talk about that certainly a little bit more today, and then get into the recap coming up tomorrow. But the news is still obviously revolving around South Carolina football and the end of the Mike Shula era as offensive coordinator. We'll dive into plenty of that coming up next. But first, going to kick things off with our Sandstorm Pick-Me-Up.
Time to get hyped. Here's your 9 a.m. Sandstorm, sponsored by George Sink Injury Lawyers. Just call all nines.
It is time for your 9 a.m. Sandstorm Pick-Me-Up, brought to you by South Carolina's largest injury law firm, George Sink Injury Lawyers. If you've been hurt in the car or at work, call George Sink now at 803 all nines. I typically like to ask this question in reference to the game itself on Tuesdays after we've gone through Reaction Monday and given our thoughts, let everybody else vent their thoughts as well. But I'll focus this in specifically for the Shula news. How do we feel an extra day out of the Shula firing on Sunday?
Still feels like the right move. This needed to happen. My opinion, though, it needed to happen weeks ago and not this late in the season. I think it should have probably happened after the first bye week, just because I know they had the good performance against Kentucky, but man, I mean, either that or after the LSU game would have been better, just because you have more time to kind of save the season. But now you have to win your last 3 games to even make a bowl game, which I don't think is happening, considering Texas A&M's on the schedule still, and they're for real in my opinion. So It's nice that it's happened because South Carolina's offense has been abysmal this year.
Right.
And it's good to see Shane Beamer making changes in season, but this one feels a little too late in my opinion.
Yeah, I guess you can make the argument that at the time your best offensive output had been against Kentucky, where you did score 21 points. So maybe there was some belief that things were trending in the right direction heading into that bye week. But yeah, since then, obviously been on this 4-game losing streak. And outside of Alabama, which again, we gave credit where it's due, that was a better offensive performance. Still not a whole lot to write home about. You know, your highest point total was that 22 points. And again, now we all were stuck with that statistic on Saturday, which I guess didn't really surprise us, but it was still glaring to see that you're the only team in FBS that's still not eclipsed 350 yards of offense in a single game this year.
Yeah, it's just, you look at that, you look at just the points per game, averaging 19.7 points per game. And the signs have been there this whole time that this thing may just not get fixed. And you go back all the way to the Citrus Bowl on New Year's Eve earlier this year. I mean, that game, there was just a difference in the way the offense operated. You only scored 17 points. That should have been a dead giveaway right there. You did have a lot of yardage in that game, I will say that. And you were able to, if I'm remembering correctly, I think you were able to move the ball decently well in that game. But, you know, ever since then, it has not been anywhere near that level of consistency where, again, like you said, Tyler, they have not eclipsed 350 yards in a single game all year. So, I mean, all the signs have been there this whole time through 10 games that this thing was just not working. And look, when the hire was made, it was the right one because Mike had been with South Carolina for the entire 24 season. You wanted to keep that good thing going with what he had done with Lenora Sellers, working with him up and close, and, you know, kind of build off of what Dow Loggins did with this offense in 2024. But it's just been massive steps backwards, and a change was needed because of those things.
Yeah, funny enough, they did have 390 yards of offense in that Citrus Bowl against Illinois, but again, you would never come anywhere near that mark in the game since. And you know, I think what our hope was that eventually it would start clicking, much like your offense did a year ago in those final 6 games of the regular season. And again, nobody accused Dow Loggins of being the greatest offensive coordinator in the world, but he understood the value of 16 last year. And when they finally started getting things rolling, it was because Lenore Sellers was kind of coming into his own. And the biggest indictment on Mike Shula as the offensive coordinator at South Carolina is that, like, in for lack of a better term, he kind of ruined Lenore Sellers. He looks like a shell of himself. And yes, there's the execution aspect of it where Sellers still has to go out there and make plays, make the throws, which he missed a lot of on Saturday. But you point squarely, it's the guy that's in charge of developing him, which that was the entire thing this offseason was, okay, Shula's going to really key in, and he's going to take Lenore Sellers to this next level as a quarterback, even better than a year ago. And he just went in the complete opposite direction.
Yeah, no, he did. It's crazy how much regression there's been with Lenoris. And I think the problem is this pro style offense that everyone talks about, and that he's not the passing type of quarterback that I think works for that type of system. Now, like a Cutter Woods, yeah, okay. I think hypothetically, if he were starting this year, I think he would better work for that system, or even in the future if Shula were still around.
Right.
But a guy like Lenoris, you know what he can do on the ground, running the football. You know how much of a dual threat he is. Don't get me wrong. Lenore Sellers can throw the football. Yeah. And we did not see that against Ole Miss, but trust me, there are times where that 47-yard touchdown throw to Nick Arbor in that game in the second half, that's what Lenoris can do throwing the football.
Right.
So despite his inaccuracy troubles and struggles along those lines, this guy can throw the football, but I just don't think the type of offense that Mike wanted to run was best suited for Lenoris to have success.
Well, it's reported now that Mike Furrey and Sean Elliott will kind of combine as co-OCs for the last 3 games of the regular season. Sean Elliott has got enough on his plate when it comes to dealing with the offensive line and making that work. So I'm not sure how stretched thin he's going to be here, but you do have 2 guys that are former head coaches. I don't specifically know about their specific play calling acumen in their time as coaches up to this point. But I guess if you're going to have to go with somebody else on the staff, those guys would make the most sense.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is going to be something where, and maybe we'll get an answer on it a little bit more clearly from Shane Beamer here next week. But I mean, he did say the other day that it would be kind of a group effort, if you will. And you look at who has called plays. I mean, not a ton of guys on this coaching staff. Mark-Will Blackwell's one that has called plays before, but I do think we'll probably get an answer on who that guy is coming up here. But it wouldn't shock me if it is, like Beamer said, a group effort from here on out.
Yeah, and we're this being a bye week, we're not going to hear from Beamer coming up today, so the next chance to hear from him will be next Tuesday. So I imagine we may not get an official announcement for that until then, but I know Big Spur reported that those two were in line to kind of take over that role, which again makes a lot of sense. And it kind of begs the question of, okay, what should we really expect now? Like, because typically when you fire a coach for a position or a head coach or whatever, in a lot of ways it's kind of punting on either that team or that position group, saying, all right, we got to make a change. We're just going to try and go through the motions and get to the very end here. I don't know how differently Furry and Elliott can run this offense if those are the two that do end up kind of taking over the reins, or if you're just saying, okay, here's what Mike Shula did. Let's just get through this and we'll focus on the hire for next year when we get to the end of the year.
Yeah, I don't know how much you can change. I do think you probably go down the strategy of let's call the best plays that work, like they did against Alabama. Let's call those plays and let's just go with it, right? I don't think you're going to make sweeping changes. I mean, I'd love to be wrong on that, but I just don't see a way in which you make sweeping changes and everything looks completely different over these final 3 games. I think you just kind of are what you are at this point. There is talent on the field, though, so maybe that will lead to some sort of change. But right now, I just don't know what to expect different from this offense, even with Mike Shula gone.
Yeah, I feel like it's probably going to look pretty similar. Again, you can't, not that you have the time to do that anyway, you can't install a new system, a new idea, a new identity. Not that you had an identity to begin with in the first place, but not a whole lot can be done in the last month of the season to really drastically change an offense. You can simplify it more, which is what Beamer essentially did when it came to Shula right before the very end in these past couple of weeks. But yeah, you're operating with the same playbook, you're operating with the same plays. You just have different person or people in this instance calling those plays. So maybe situationally, maybe you do some things differently, which again, that was a big area that Strula struggled with. So maybe Furry and Elliott can make some better decisions, like with 4th and 1s and 3rd downs and those kind of things, but we'll see.
Yeah, and maybe that will be the difference that we notice on the field is just some little tweaks here and there, maybe a few different plays thrown in. I don't know. I'm not a coach. I don't know like how that process works of, okay, what can you add? What can you install that's new when you have a coaching change like this late in the season? I think if it were midway through the year, maybe like, in October or even after the first bye week, maybe you could have seen some real changes with how the scheme looks and whatnot. But right now, since it's just so late, I just don't see a ton of differences in the play calling. But situationally, what you call at this moment might be different than what Mike would have called it at a certain point.
And you do have the benefit of a bye week, so no opponent focused on coming up this weekend. I believe they're off Thursday through Saturday this week, so you do have a couple practices this week where you can kind of implement whatever you need to implement and get the guys used to the new play callers and all that kind of stuff before locking in on A&M coming up next week. But again, that's still a limited amount of time to really try and implement anything new or any kind of crazy wrinkles into the offense you're already running.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see, who does call plays, whether it is, if it's Elliott and Furry, that's great. I think a lot of fans would like to see that. But even if it's someone else, I mean, it's an opportunity here to – I don't think any of these guys are vying for the full-time OC role. I mean, I would hope not. I think South Carolina really does have to go outside the box here. Just it did not work the last time they kept it in-house with this hire and made just kind of a quick decision. I think it'd be better just to look outside. But it is undoubtedly a chance to see if this offense really can kind of reach its potential, because I feel like there are good players that can make plays. Like you have Nick Harvey, you have Lenore Sellers. Vandrevius Jacobs hasn't done anything for a month. I mean, they have talented players on this roster. It just has not come together under Shula.
Yeah, and I agree with you. You're going to have to go outside and make a hire, and hopefully it's a big splash hire. But it begs the question to me of how attractive is this job? Who would want to come here and call plays for South Carolina? Let's talk about that on the other side. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Veltri with you on your Tuesday here on The Game. All right. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Belcher along with you here on your Tuesday on the game. Of course, talking about the now vacant offensive coordinator position for South Carolina heading into the 2026 season. And as bad as this year has been for Carolina, and again, I think a lot of us are expecting them to lose on the road at A&M coming up here in a week and a half and be out of eligibility for a bowl game completely at that point in time. There is a level of excitement when you do have a opening at a coordinator spot in terms of what direction they're going to end up going and who that hire is going to be. And look, I've scoured through Twitter, I've seen the message boards, and everybody has a name they're going to throw out there and an idea of who could come in here and be South Carolina's next offensive coordinator. And a lot of those are notable names, and rightfully so. That's what you want. You want the best possible hire at that spot. You know, Gus Malzahn and Kendall Briles and Andy Koldenicki at Penn State, and let's see, Mike Purdy on our text line pointed out Sean Brophy, who's the quarterbacks coach and passing games coordinator at North Texas, and all these names that are rightfully at the top of the list in terms of best offensive minds in college football that would be up for a position like this. But, Jack, I don't know how attractive the South Carolina offensive coordinator position job is at this current time.
I think it also depends on, you see all the head coaching vacancies across the country. Well, we also have to think about how much of those current staffs are going to be retained heading into next season. Like how many of those new coaches bring in their own coordinators, their own assistants? You know, I think that's something that could affect how attractive this South Carolina OC job is. I think it's attractive for the reason that before this year, before Mike Shula became OC, South Carolina was a borderline college football playoff team in 2024.
Yep.
So I know Shane says they're not that far off, and I know this season gives you no inclination that they are close to being back in the mix. But I think he is right in that when this offense is rolling, when essentially when they are getting, having a good coordinator call plays and not struggling offensively, they can go out there and be a good team. Heck, I think this year, if they had a half decent offense, we're probably not talking about them missing a bowl game right now.
Yeah,
they're definitely at least, I think, an 8-7 win team this year. But right now, they're probably going to miss a bowl game for the second time in 3 years. So this job may not seem attractive right now, but I do think somebody out there is going to definitely take it. I think it will definitely be one of the better coordinator, hires in this cycle, hopefully.
Well, you bring up the point with so many different head coaching jobs being open, and well, guess what? All those head coaches, all those jobs can have to be filled by head coaches. Those head coaches are going to have to bring in their own staff, which means you're going to have 10, 12 plus different coordinators getting hired across the country at high-profile jobs this season. I don't really know where South Carolina stacks up in this. And again, when you throw out the names like the Malzahns and the Koldenickis and guys like that, I don't know if they're really looking at South Carolina saying, okay, yeah, that's a place that I want to go. For one, can you pay them what they're worth? Because let's face it, if you want to get a big-name coordinator, you're going to have to fork over big-name coordinator money. And, Dal and Mike Shula are making just a little over $1 million a year, annual salary-wise, but that's not quite to the level of what some of these guys are commanding at the very top end of coordinators in college football. So, one, can you pay for one of those guys to come in here and fill that role? And B, is this an attractive of enough spot compared to going to a Penn State, going to an Auburn, going to a Florida, going to an LSU, going to a UCLA? The list goes on, and more firings to come with places like Florida State and all that kind of stuff. I don't know where you fall in the mix in terms of people that would want to take this job.
I think you'll have to – I think you're going to have to overpay a little bit for a coordinator, but I don't think it's going to be something where you're going to need to make this guy like the highest paid coordinator in college football. I think South Carolina realizes that they're going to have to spend money with this hire to get this right. You can't go cheap and expect it to work out. You're not paying – I personally, I don't think you're paying $1 million for your next coordinator. I think you're probably paying a little bit closer to maybe 2, maybe 2.5. That's just my opinion. I don't know what the highest paid coordinator gets, but I'm sure it's higher than that right now. For South Carolina, I just don't think the money should be an object in this case. Like, don't pay $5 million for a coordinator, but if it comes down to paying an extra million, so be it, as long as it's the right guy. Because if Shane Beamer gets this one wrong, we already know he's going into next season probably on the hot seat for sure. That seat will probably be real hot. And if the season gets off to a rough start because the offense struggles and you didn't get the right guy coordinator, well, guess what? Then that means Shane Beamer is probably not going to be South Carolina's head coach much longer.
So I'm looking at the list of highest paid assistants. This came out in December of last year, so obviously some of these positions have changed. Blake Baker, and I know he's a defensive coordinator, but he's making 2.5 at LSU. I'm trying to see here in terms of highest paid offensive coordinators. Chip Kelly was making $2 million last year at Ohio State.
Okay.
So
you probably don't need to go. You probably don't need to go insanely high, but like definitely.
Okay. For reference, you just played Ole Miss. Charlie Weiss Jr. is making 1.6.
Okay.
So there you go.
You could probably get away with paying about $1 million, $1.5 million, but I think it just depends on who the coordinator is, and also how desperate does South Carolina look to try and get the best coordinator on the market? Because at that point, they might have to overpay. I mean, maybe they will become the highest paid offensive coordinator in the country. I mean, maybe that's what it takes to get the guy they want.
Well, and again, it begs the question of, do you have the money for that? First of all, and here's the question for me too: is Sellers coming back? Right, because I do think if you can guarantee that 16 is going to be here next year, that makes this job a lot more attractive. But if he's gone, going to the NFL, which I lean towards that's probably going to be the case, just based on my thinking at this point in time, then you're hiring somebody that either A, has to take over an unknown quarterback situation with two unproven guys in Cutter Woods and Aaron Nolan, or you're going to have to go out there in the portal and find somebody, which is never obviously a guarantee at that point in time either. But if you can promise me Sellers is going to come back, I do think this job becomes a little bit more attractive in that way.
Oh, totally. I mean, that's the other thing that I'm curious to see what the timeline is with this hire, because if it's made before whenever Sellers does have to officially make a decision on his future, whether it's going to the draft, whether it's transferring. I mean, the portal doesn't open up until January 2nd, so you don't have to necessarily worry about that right now. But I think the bigger thing is, okay, will Sellers enter the draft? And I'm not sure if he will, but the point is, when it comes to making the decision on what to do, I feel like I would assume part of him is probably going to be wondering, okay, who's this next offensive coordinator going to be? Because if I'm looking at Lenoris right now, I still think he's got first-round draft pick written all over him this season, and maybe that's enough for him to go ahead and declare if that's what scouts are seeing.
Yep.
But I don't think he's had a good season. I mean, he has not played anywhere near to the level he did last year, and we were talking about him being a first-round pick last year, but he's back at South Carolina this year for his third year and just has not played particularly well. I think depending on who the coordinator is, he could really benefit from learning a bit more, especially in the passing game, because he needs to get better as a passer if he's going to make it in the league.
The declaration deadline, by the way, is January 15th, which would be right after the transfer portal period ends. So ideally, you would hope Sellers makes a decision before then, but he does have up until the 15th to decide if he wants to go pro or not. And again, if the thinking is that he'll stay and then he decides to go at the last minute, then, oh man, I don't even want to imagine how sideways things could get.
No, I'm not sure. I mean, I think we're gonna this OC hire is just, it's so important. But whether you get Lenoris back or not next year, also let's keep in mind, depending on where you look to hire your next OC, maybe they take a few players with them, including a quarterback. That could be very much ideal. I mean, what if you go after Jordan Davis from North Texas and you get that quarterback that has been really, really good for them? That's just breaking all sorts of passing numbers right now. So I think that would be something to just keep an eye on, as well as wherever you get this coordinator from, keep in mind you could probably find a way to get that quarterback to come with them.
Yeah, no, it's going to be interesting to see how this search ends up playing out. Obviously, this year's not been fun on any front for South Carolina football, really. And what has that done to the perception of Shane Beamer here locally in the Gamecock fandom? We'll discuss that coming up next as the Extra Point rolls along. Tyler Head and Jack Beltry on your Tuesday on the Game. It's all right here for our friends over at Twin Peaks. Tell you about it all the time, but I'm happy to remind you Twin Peaks is your ultimate destination to take in whatever sports action you're interested in. And right now, quite frankly, you've got just about every sport to offer on tap, with the exception of baseball, which did just end the other day. But if you want to watch some basketball, college and pro, college starting last night, you can go check that out. You want to watch football? Football's quite literally on every single day from now through Thanksgiving. You can check that out as well. Hockey going on too as the NHL season has just gotten underway, and Twin Peaks has got a TV for you to watch whatever sport you are interested in. And you can pair that with some delicious handcrafted scratch-made food and, of course, those 29-degree draft beers to cap off a great night, a great weekend, or whenever you want to go down and hang out with our friends over at Twin Peaks. All right, welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Beltry along with you here on your Tuesday on the game. Again, reminder tonight, men's basketball tips off their season against North Carolina A&T. Game starts at 7 o'clock. Pregame coverage starting here with Derek and Judge Manning at 6:30 right here on 107.5. The game, we'll get into a little bit more of what the women did coming up at the end of the hour. But, Jack, as we continue this conversation stemming from the Shula firing on Sunday, I want to kind of talk about Coach Beamer a little bit because I've noticed something in these past couple weeks. And, look, this is kind of to be expected when you're having a season as rough as South Carolina is having this year. But I've seen the perception and people's thoughts on Beamer shift quite a bit. And quite frankly, I think the catalyst of that was his interaction with you after the Oklahoma game. And that wasn't the reason why people started to maybe change their attitude on Coach Beamer. But I think that was kind of a pivotal moment where a lot of people maybe took off their rose-colored glasses a little bit and said, hey, wait a minute, I don't like A, where the season's headed, and B, the way that he's handling questions like this. And since then, I've gotten, and again, I know Twitter and message boards don't speak for everybody, but they can be a good snapshot of the way a fan base is feeling. And there's been a lot of sourness towards Beamer these past couple of weeks.
Oh, totally. I mean, it's not just the losses that have made people feel some type of way, but I think the way he's kind of handled things lately. I think that's how, why people feel a bit more frustrated. And it's important to note that, he got his contract extension earlier this year, got his raise back in, I believe it was January. So, I mean, it has not even been a full calendar year since you gave him all that money. So you're not getting rid of him. I mean, I don't think he's going anywhere after this season, and he'll be here next year in 2026. And then if next year's bad, then that's a different discussion for a later day. But, yeah, right now, I think it's fair to say, Tyler, that he's got to kind of win back over this fan base. Does that feel like an overreach? Does that feel like an accurate statement to you?
No, I think that's completely a fair point. And look, when you had a season like last year where you went 9-3 and you were at least in the discussion for the college football playoff, that buys you good grace for a while. And look, I know at places like Florida and LSU, even coming off of a season like that, they'd still fire you in the next year if they didn't like the results that you were having. But South Carolina's a different place, and that bought him at least a buffer year in case things went sideways, which they have this year. So again, like you said, he's not going to be fired this year unless he went and took another job, which I don't think is going to happen. He's going to go be your coach in 2026. But then that's where the seat can start to get warm if things don't continue to improve. But you're right. I do think he has to win over a lot of the fan base, because it's one thing to struggle, but it's another thing to almost kind of make people think they're dumb for pointing out the flaws and not addressing it in the way you wanted him to. Because again, let's go back to your interaction with him where you asked a very legitimate question, because the week prior he had made the move by firing Lonnie Teasley, the first time he had ever made an in-season staff change in 5 years with this program. And of course, when that kind of thing happens, that's unprecedented up to that point. It's going to beg the question in the minds of people of, okay, can that happen again? And when you had a dismal offensive performance like the Oklahoma game was, people are like, hey, would you be willing to move on from Shula? Again, it's a very reasonable question to ask, and he just completely goes with the visceral reaction of, I made a change last week, and almost how dare you ask me about that, when it was a very legitimate question to be asked. And yeah, I think that lost a lot of good grace with people in terms of how they view Beamer. So yeah, you have to win them over by, quite frankly, making a good offensive coordinator hire and winning a lot of games next year. That's the only way to do it.
But I think also moving on from Shula, especially if things go well over the next 3 weeks, I think that will help win a lot of people back in his good graces. I think the moving on from Shula, even though it's very much overdue, it's a move that I think a lot of people are happy about. Because, look, Shane does not move on from coaches in season. That never happened before this year. Now he's done it twice this year. So you can't really knock him for not trying to save the season and trying to improve things as much as he can, even if these changes kind of felt like, okay, they should have happened a long time ago. But right now, I mean, it's not going to get much better. I think it only continues to get worse before it does get better. And you might finish this season 4-8 with only one more win against Coastal. I will say, watch out for that Clemson game at the end of the year. Even if South Carolina is not playing for a bowl game, winning the Clemson game, I don't think it changes much for the larger picture of South Carolina football. But I think the Gamecock fans, the common folk fans that love this rivalry and hate Clemson, I think they will at least appreciate that Beamer's now won 3 of the last 4 years against that rival. So that would be something to be worth keeping an eye on as you head into the offseason.
I have a pretty good idea of how the A&M game's going to go. I have a pretty good idea of how I think the Coastal game's going to go. I have no freaking clue how that Clemson game's going to go, man. That could be the ugliest football game we've ever seen in our life. That could be a highly scoring, entertaining shootout of a football game or somewhere in between. I just truly do not know, A, what the interest level of both programs is going to be at those point in times, because both of them could be out of bowl eligibility by the time that game gets here. And quite frankly, what staffs look like at that point in time. I don't believe Clemson's made any in-season staff changes, but they could certainly make some in the next couple weeks if the wheels continue to fall off there. And who knows what Beamer could do in the next couple weeks. If he's already made 2 firings in season, why couldn't he make more? I truly don't know what both those teams going to look like come the end of this month.
It's going to be ugly. It's going to be ugly. Clemson's not good. South Carolina's not very good either. But it's going to be interesting if those teams are fighting for bowl eligibility at that season. Otherwise, if there's nothing to play for other than just state pride, I'll be curious to see how invested both teams are.
Well, and gosh, if Carolina loses this next weekend against A&M, where you're already up 7 losses, you aren't playing for bowl eligibility at that point in time, and that would mean 2 out of the last 3 years you've missed a bowl game. I know last year was great, 9 wins, and again, being ranked in the top 15 when it came to Selection Sunday, but missing bowls 2 out of 3 years, that's just not something that people are going to find acceptable.
Yeah, it would not be acceptable. I think I think it's going to be interesting to see how the fan base views this season. If you do go 5-7, miss a bowl game, but you beat Clemson at the end of the year, is that a failure in a lot of people's eyes? Beating Clemson is very important around here.
It is.
But I will say, I think not making a bowl game holds a lot more weight. I think that alone makes the season a failure.
Especially coming off of the success that you had a year ago. You can't go 9-3 and then miss a bowl game the next year. That is not acceptable at any program around the country, right? And look, being able to replicate what you did a year ago or improve on that was going to be a challenge, but I don't think anybody would have been upset if this team went 8-4 this year, or even 7-5, saying, hey, you know what? It wasn't as good as last year, but still, you were kind of in that same realm of being a 7 to 8 win team. And who knows, maybe if the ball bounces a different way, maybe you find a 9th win. But it was a lot to ask to try and back that up last year, given the talent that you lost. But dropping to potentially a 5-7 at worst, maybe a 4-8, that's just downright unacceptable.
Yeah, it would be unacceptable. I mean, I think beating Clemson at the end of the year and then finishing the season off a little bit better would be nice, I think, for some folks. But if you're not, at the end of the day, you're going from 9 wins to 5 wins. You're taking a massive step backwards. I mean, there was so much potential for this season to be good, but it really has not been at all. And I think that's just more disappointing than anything.
Yeah, Beamer does have some work to do when it comes to rebuilding a little bit with this fan base after how rocky the season has been and how he's kind of handled some of the public comments when it comes to the decision that he has made. We'll come back, wrap up the hour, talk about what women's basketball did last night to open their season, look ahead to men's basketball coming up tonight as the Extra Point rolls along. Tyler Head and Jack Beltry on your Tuesday on the Game.
experienced guards. So you tend to expect those type of things. I mean, I'm impressed with the efficient part of it. They're very, very efficient, and more likely they're getting some layups. Like, you can't just be a jump shooter. They're attacking the basket. They're getting layups. They're in a pretty good rhythm, and they practice that way. They practice like it's a game. So when it's game time, it's just the same type of rhythm.
Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Belcher wrapping up the hour here on your Tuesday on the Game. That, of course, the voice of Dawn Staley for head coach women's basketball last night after her team opened up the season with a 94-54 win over Grand Canyon, of course, coached by Winston Gandy, former assistant for Dawn Staley's team, and they had a little ring ceremony last year for their Final Four run. Got to be a part of that, which was neat. And then Carolina went out there and did exactly what we expected them to do, handle their business. It was a good opportunity to get a look at some of the newer players, Tania Latston, and girls like that in their first true opportunity to play for South Carolina. And again, it kind of looked like business as usual. Everybody went out there, played well, and another good start to the season.
Shot really well yesterday. 59.6% from the field, 47.4% three-point range. Got to knock down more of your free throws. Missing 8 last night is not ideal. But overall, looked very good for the team that went to the Final Four last year and should be very much in the mix to get back there again this year. The good thing is it won't always be like this every single game, but your entire starting 5 had double digits last night. So looked really good. I think Raven Johnson looked especially good. I know she struggled a bit last year, but she had 11 points, 8 rebounds, 7 assists. So borderline close enough to a triple-double in this game, but also went 3 of 5 from three-point range in 26 minutes. So she looked really good, and I think that's a really good thing to see.
Yeah, and I know that the three-point shot is something that she was talking about working on, more in the offseason. And it's a one-game sample size, but efficient 3 for 5, as you mentioned there, going from 3. And the entire team shot really well from beyond the arc, which is not something we saw a lot of in those couple of exhibition games they played. And again, you have somebody like Tania Latson that can do just a little bit of everything there, and 20 points in her debut last night. Tess Johnson with 19, Joyce Edwards with 13. Again, as you mentioned, everybody in double figures. Cotton Johnson with 12 and 11 respectively as well. So again, good start of the year. And here's the thing: you're only going to get so many prove-it opportunities in the non-conference play for South Carolina. So games like this you can't take a whole lot away from because the talent level is so different between these two teams. But again, they handled their business, which at the end of the day is the most important thing.
Exactly. They won by 40 points, and you'll have a few more of these games coming up. You get Bowling Green on Friday night, so that should be another gimme type of game. You'll get Clemson next week, and then it will pick up a little bit with going out west to Los Angeles to take on Southern Cal, Duke, Louisville, but I think South Carolina should be fine through non-conference play here.
Tonight, we turn our attention to men's basketball, taking on North Carolina A&T. Again, tip-off at 7 o'clock, pregame coverage starting at 6:30 right here on the Game. And, Jack, we've been talking about it a little bit over these past couple weeks. We had Tanner Bronson in studio with us on Friday for the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. There's just an excitement and a buzz about this team that hopefully is similar to what it was 2 years ago where they made the run to the NCAA tournament. But Coach Paris seems to be very giddy about the group of guys that he has. And, again, tonight's not going to tell us everything because of the quality of opponent that you're playing. But, again, hopefully it gets off to a better start than last year.
Yeah, look, last year, the schedule's very much similar to last year in terms of quality of opponents. You're not playing many tough opponents outside of Butler, Northwestern, Clemson, and Virginia Tech. Outside of that, your schedule is very favorable, and you should not lose any of these non-conference games besides the 4 that I just mentioned there, which I think you could still win maybe 2 or 3 of and be okay. But North Carolina A&T is ranked 353rd in KenPom, Tyler. That's as low to the bottom as you can get. So South Carolina should not have any trouble with this game. But then again, we said the same thing last year about North Florida, and look what happened. The difference, I think, is this team is much improved compared to last year. I think they've got an identity as a team that can shoot the three-point ball. We saw that against NC State in the exhibition game. And I know, exhibition game. but they played it like it was a real game. So I take that away as South Carolina was only 2 points away from beating NC State, had a double-digit point lead in the second half. They should have no problem tonight.
Yeah, if you're going to pick a team to start the season with, one that's 353rd in KenPom is probably going to be at the top of your list of options there. Is again, that's hopefully going to give you an opportunity to do a lot of things that you want to do to hopefully get the season started on the right foot.
Yeah, I mean, they got to get this thing going, really well these first few games. I mean, you're going to have it. You should, when you go to Greenbrier here on November 21st to take on Butler, you should be 4-0. I mean that should be a given with NCA&T, Southern Miss, Presbyterian, Radford. It'll be a little bit tough with some of those other games, as I mentioned, with VT, Clemson, but overall, South Carolina should be able to handle their business and head into SEC play in January on a good note.
So, again, that's coming up tonight. Tip-off at 7 o'clock. Pregame coverage starting at 6:30 right here on the game. And we'll obviously talk about that tomorrow and hear what Coach Bears has to say after the fact of hopefully starting off the season this year 1-0. We'll dive into the Garnet Trust Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. Coming up next, Hugh Freeze no longer has a job out there at Auburn. We'll hear what he had to say after their embarrassing loss to Kentucky on Saturday. We're also going to hear from Chris Lowe of On 3 and talk about some coaching carousel and greater college football stuff with him as well. That's all coming up in hour number 2 as your Tuesday rolls along here on the game. It's all right here for our friends over at Canty Foundation Specialist. I tell you all about it all the time, but I'm happy to remind you, you always need to be on the lookout for things happening around your home that may look just a little bit off. Things like cracks in your exterior brick, cracks in walls or above windows and door frames, doors or windows that might be sticking, uneven or bouncy floors, or cracks over your garage door. If you notice any of these problems with your home, you could have serious foundation issues, and that's where our friends at Canty Foundation Specialist come in. Go online to schedule an appointment today at cantycanfixit.com. They'll send a professional out to your home to evaluate your foundation issues and get them fixed so you and your family can live worry-free going forward. Again, go online to schedule an appointment today at cantycanfixit.com and let our friends at Canty Foundation Specialist help you with your foundation issues.
Well, I wish I could ask for patience, but that's not really something that's that people want to give in this day and time, and I understand that. I just know that we're so dang close, and if we had a few things go our way earlier in the year, I think we're looking at a whole different deal. But it didn't, and that's life, and that's the game of football, and it teaches us a lot of great things and a lot of tough things, and we'll get up and go to work and get ready for the next one, and I know these kids will. It's hard, it stinks, and I'd love for their patience, but I understand that you're probably not getting patience from them because they want to see a better product on the field, and so do I.
Welcome back in. It is the Garnet Trust Hour presented by Krantz Cooling Heating. Tyler Head, Jack Belcher, Chris Clark, along with you here. And it's funny, as I'm playing that, they're just now starting the replay of Auburn versus Kentucky on the SEC Network, which, if you have eyes, I would not advise putting them on that game. It was ugly football, especially from Auburn's standpoint. But Hugh Freeze, man, they were so darn close. And look, I don't watch every single press conference from Hugh Freeze after games over his past 3 years, but I've heard so darn close a million times for him, and, well, eventually they got sick of hearing that, and they did decide to fire him on Sunday.
Well, I don't know if you watched John Cohen, their AD's presser.
I did.
And he addressed that. Basically, the question is, do you think you guys are close? And he basically said, I don't care. He said, close doesn't count, which is, you do have to have nuance in this game.
Sure.
And being close can be a reason to keep a coach. Being close too often is a reason to get rid of a coach, because at some point you have to stop being close and actually do what you're trying to do. And, predictably, this happens everywhere. As soon as a coach departs a place, the stories start coming out about what went wrong. Because that's really the time. I mean, you're obviously analyzing it in real time, what is going wrong, but then you have a chance to step back, more people start talking, and you start learning more and more about, okay, what were the reasons here that things went so wrong. And I don't know if you guys checked out that CBS Sports story that John Talty did. Obviously, the quarterback situation was a big part of it for Hugh Freeze, not going after Cam Ward, doubling down on Peyton Thorne, bringing in Jackson Arnold, and not being able to fix the offense generally. And I think there was a source line in that story that Hugh Freeze realized those things, went too late. He's golfing a lot. He's going out to the golf course to watch other guys play golf with no clubs. Those things are an issue.
He's scouting other golfers.
Yes. Instead of quarterbacks.
Yes.
Which is a problem. And going to be fascinating, guys. So another school now in the market, for a head coach. And even if you want to bring this local, here's something I think a lot of people are talking about, well, who's going to be the next OC hire for South Carolina? Well, obviously we don't know yet. The coaching carousel actually could have an effect on that, too. South Carolina's obviously not looking for a head coach. But at these schools at Florida and LSU, Auburn and Virginia Tech, all these different places, you're going to be hiring a new head coach. You're going to be hiring a new staff, new offensive coordinator. And then whatever place that those coaches fill those jobs came from, they'll be looking for a new head coach, new offensive coordinator. And so that could play into all this. It's been, my perception's been that this is one of the wildest carousels that I've seen probably since I've been doing this. And just talking to some other people who've been in it for a long time too, coaches and people who work for coaching agencies, they agree. They're like, I think this is the craziest one.
Jack, 25% of the SEC is going to be looking for new head coaches in this offseason. At least, I mean, they could still fire Stoops at Kentucky, and then we're talking about more. But right now, 4 out of 16 teams are going to be looking for head coaches we're already looking for them. But when the offseason gets here, those hires will be made.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy that, we're just now hitting November, and a lot of those coaches have already been gone for a few weeks now, but it is kind of crazy seeing all the change around the sport with schools firing different coaches, and then the SEC has 4 firings. Sorry. Steve Sarkisian from Texas brought up a really interesting point in his press conference. I think it was yesterday. Basically bring up the question, okay, you're going to fire all these coaches, but who are you going to hire? There's only so many coaches that would be available to hire right now. And also, you're probably plucking these different coaches from other schools, which leads to even more schools having to look for new coaches next season. So it's easy to say, yeah, okay, we're going to get rid of this guy. We're going to pay the buyout, and then we're going to go get our guy. Well, what if you don't get your guy? What if somebody else now goes out there and takes your guy, right? There's only one Lane Kiffin, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What if Lane doesn't even leave Ole Miss, huh? Does that plan suddenly backfire for LSU, Florida, one of those schools out there? It's in theory, it makes sense that these schools want to move on from their coaches because they're not succeeding. But at the same time, they might not be able to get the guy that they want that would be better than what they have right now.
You know, sometimes when you're the first program to fire a coach, you almost kind of feel like you're getting a leg up on the competition. Hey, our job's open. We're going to start thinking and looking and all that kind of stuff. And I think about a program like Arkansas that it seems like forever ago that Sam Pittman was fired because they were the first in the SEC to do so and probably thought, hey, we're the first SEC job to come open. We're going to be attractive and all this kind of stuff. Well, then 3 other programs within your own conference that are better jobs than you have now fired their head coach, where you have to find yourself at the back of that line, not to mention you're behind Penn State. You're going to be behind Florida State if they do decide to fire Mike Norvell. You know, the list goes on and on here. And even to that point, I do wonder if you're a Kentucky, if you're a Florida State, do you look at the fact of how much competition you're going to have in this hiring cycle and say, you know what? Maybe we punt this down the road a little bit longer and see how next year goes. And then if things continue to go wrong, then we make a change. Because, again, I don't think there's enough high-quality coaching candidates that would take a new job to fill these roles of high-profile jobs right now.
I was talking to someone yesterday, just kind of trading notes, someone in the media who covers Florida. And I said, you know, obviously, what you think's going to happen down there? And it's just, well, it's wait on Lane. And I'm like, well, what if Lane doesn't come? I don't know. You know,
there's no plan B.
I don't think it'll be, you know, this guy, because that's really getting down the list. But it might be this group of guys, and you don't really feel great about any of them, you know. So, you know, you've got that at Florida where it's pretty obvious. Like it is, you can't even say it's a poorly kept secret. It's just not a secret at all. Aside from, you remember when they were about to hire Jim McElwain, and Florida's like tweeting out pictures of them at Jim McElwain's house, and that, hey, we're on the plane. We're going to meet with Coach McElwain at Colorado State out in Fort Collins. It hasn't gotten to that level, but aside from that, like everybody knows that's the direction they would like to go. But you've got, well, Lane Kiffin's doing really well at Ole Miss. He seems very happy there. They're probably going to make the college football playoff.
And really, if
timing,
I would say if they make the playoff, that kind of puts you in a no-win situation if you're trying to hire him, because he's tied up at least probably through the end of the month of December, and you've got early signing day, you've got a portal opening on January 2nd. That puts you out of luck there.
And we know Lane Kiffin's going to want to use the portal.
Yeah.
You know, so can you agree? You know, for both schools, it'd be weird. Can you, if you're Florida and you can get an agreement? Can you get an agreement done early? Well, then Lane Kiffin's not actually on your staff at that time leading your program, but then you're missing those important dates. But then if you're Ole Miss, our guy Neil McCready, who we had on last week to talk about Ole Miss on the program, he brought up a good point of, like, if you're Ole Miss's athletic department and you know Lane Kiffin's leaving, even if they try to keep it a secret, it'll leak. Sure. I mean, there's no doubt. Do you want Lane Kiffin coaching your team? Well, if you're in the playoff, probably, right? I mean, you got a chance to win, so there's a lot of weird factors at play. But I heard those comments, Jack, that you referenced by Sark, and it is a good point, you know, and it goes back to that tough predicament that we were talking about, in that, you know, at some point it's obvious that you have to make a change for head coach at your head coaching position. Other times it's not quite so cut and dry, and one of your considerations has to be, who can we get here? And in this year, this market, think about some of these schools like Florida State, for instance. Florida State is probably sitting there going, oh boy, now if we pull the plug here, not only is it going to be super expensive, but now we have to enter a very crowded coaching market where you got Florida, LSU, Penn State, et cetera, all open and more to come. you got to kind of wonder about the quality, or do you just try to run it back again, hit the transfer portal, invest in NIL? Like these are tough decisions nowadays, but very important decisions.
Like for a school like Florida State, like it's going to be super, super expensive to cut Norvell loose. And we'll see how the rest of this season goes, because Florida State, for all intents and purposes, could end the season on a high note, win more games than maybe we previously thought when things were going real bad. And maybe you don't need to cut ties with Norvell for this year. That would be the ideal scenario, right? But I think at a school like Florida State, like you said, Chris, they're not going to be at the back of the line. They'll jump in front of schools. But for those schools that are at the back of the line, like let's say, Auburn, or I don't know, like UCLA, I mean, you're probably looking at, not everyone's getting the big fish in the pond. You're going to be getting the smaller fish, aka group of 5 head coaches, hot shot coordinators. I mean, that's more of a gamble than anything. And I just don't know if some schools are willing to settle for that, because I'm sure LSU and Florida are going to be going after the high-profile head coaches out there with a track record. But not everyone's going to be able to get that, and that might be what I think deters some schools away, maybe from, hey, let's fire our head coach right now. But oh, wait, we're probably not going to be able to get maybe who we want right now.
It's definitely probably the most chaotic coaching carousel any of us have ever seen in our lifetimes in college football, maybe even ever. It's going to certainly be hard to top this kind of one in years to come. One guy that can give a lot of insight on this and everything going on in this wild world of college football in 2025 is Chris Lowe of On3. He's going to join us on the other side as the Garnet Trust Hour, presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating, rolls along. Tyler, Jack, and Chris on your Tuesday on the Game.
All right, everyone, let's tell you about our friends over at Integrated Media. If you're having issues at your home with your Wi-Fi signal, if you need a new TV mounted, if you're looking at security and cameras, wireless speakers, if you want to trick out that patio section, now that the seasons have changed, build out that fire pit area with some really cool electronics. You can check out all of the college football action for the remainder of the season, or that man cave that you've always wanted. They can do it all for you and more. Go check out some examples of their past work. Integrated Media Columbia on Instagram and Facebook, or check out their website, integratedmediainc.com. Michael, Nathan, their team, they've been out to my home. They've been to Wes's home. They've helped us with our Wi-Fi. They put all my old video game systems on a switcher so that you don't have to worry about all of those cords. They've mounted TVs. They can do all of that and more. They can source the equipment. You don't have to go to the big box stores. They can source it and install it. 803-948-8327, Integrated Media.
All right, welcome back in. It is the Garnet Trust Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. Tyler Head, Jack Belcher, and Chris Clark along with you here on your Tuesday on the Game, taking a spin around the world of college football in this chaotic year of 2025. Nobody better to give us some insight than veteran reporter working for On3, Chris Lowe, who's joining us now on the AAA Heating and Air phone lines. Chris, appreciate you taking your time. How are we doing today, man?
I'm doing great. It's good to be with you guys.
Well, thanks for being with us, and you couldn't have come in at a better time. We were just talking about the Hugh Freeze firing in the last segment there. A fourth of the jobs open in the SEC. Tons of high-profile jobs across the nation. They're looking for coaches this upcoming offseason. Who the heck's going to fill all these jobs? Is there enough coaches to fill these jobs?
Yeah, and there may be more, too. There may be more coming. In fact, I would predict that there will be more firings as we get into the last part of November. I think there's certainly a chance we may see a change at FSU, Kentucky, maybe Wisconsin. So I would say my advice to fans is just strap it in pretty good, man, because I don't think we've seen the last of the carnage. To your question, I think that's what a lot of people, coaches, administrators are asking. Well, are there enough guys who are qualified who you can point to and say this person is definitely ready to be a head coach? I do think there's a really good crop of G5 coaches out there. Alex Golich certainly at USF, Ryan Silverfield at Memphis, John Sumrall, who I think will be heavily involved in the Auburn search at Tulane. And I also like some of the coordinators are out there. I was in Columbus last weekend for the Penn State-Ohio State game, and Brian Hartline is going to get a job, the Buckeyes OC. He's been pretty picky to this point. He's been there for about a decade. And I would not be surprised to see him involved at Penn State, depending on what happens with guys like Clark Lee and Vanderbilt, which if that were to happen, that creates another job opening in the SEC. And then I think when you look around at other coordinators, Colin Klein at Texas A&M, their OC, I got to think he's going to get a job somewhere. And Will Stein at Oregon. You know, to me, it's no coincidence that when you look around college football now, everybody wants a sitting head coach, fans, ADs. Well, who are some of the most successful guys right now? Kirby Smart was a coordinator. Marcus Freeman was a coordinator. Dan Lanning was a coordinator. So I don't think that's if you got somebody like that you know is up and coming, even though he hasn't been a head coach, I just don't think it should be a deal breaker.
Chris, thanks for taking time to join us again. I know you got a lot going on. Let's talk about the coach who's on the radar for several of these jobs. I think most specifically Florida, and that's Lane Kiffin. Obviously, at Ole Miss, Gamecocks saw him, took a loss against his program in Oxford on Saturday. Probably hard to predict, but to put you on the spot, does he stay in Oxford? Does he go to Gainesville? Does he go to Baton Rouge? Like, what do you think happens and plays out with Lane Kiffin?
Yeah, I got to be careful because everything anybody says right now in our profession about a coach, whether you're predicting or saying he may or may not go to that fan base, whether it's Auburn, whether it's Ole Miss, they perceive it as a slight. So the way I would answer that is simply this, because I was with Lane about 2 weeks ago. I don't think Lane really knows what he's going to do right now. I also think that it's good to be Lane Kiffin right now. He's had the best stretch at Ole Miss maybe ever, certainly one of them, in the last 50 years. Ole Miss has stepped up and paid him a ton of money. He genuinely likes living there. They have invested in the program with NIL cash. There's no reason that they can't be in a 12-team format. Certainly if we get to 16 teams, a consistent participant in the playoff. That said, if you're looking at it again from sort of his perspective, you've done all these things, you've accomplished these things, you're 50, and you're at the top of the list of two of the top, 6, 7, 8 jobs in America, LSU and Florida. You know, do you kick yourself if you don't take a serious look at those? I mean, are you ever going to be in that type of position again? I sort of think that's where he is. I know this. he was very clear to me. You know, he wasn't happy with himself the way it all went down with Auburn last time. It was a distraction for him, for his team, and that team bottomed out toward the end of the season. This is an Ole Miss team that has a chance to be a playoff team, and I understand that the next question for fans is, well, is there any way that you could make that work if your team's in the playoff and you win a game and still be in consideration for a job elsewhere with the portal timeline, the signing day? Yeah, I think there is. If you're the guy, and it's a job in Lane's case that he thinks, you know, would warrant that. So I don't know. I don't really have a prediction because I don't think he's made up his mind. I do think, though, he is and will be very seriously considering both of those opportunities.
Hey, Chris, it's Jack Velcher here. Appreciate you joining us. You know, with all the coaches that have been fired in this cycle, and look, not every school that has already fired a coach is going to get who they want, but I guess my question is, how many of these currently fired head coaches do you think are coaching again next year? Is it possible that a few of them are, or what do you think with that?
Yeah, I would say Franklin's at the top of that list. He's going to get a gig. Virginia Tech is certainly one that he's had discussions with, or his reps. He'll be in it, I think, at Auburn. If Florida State were open, I think he would be in it in Tallahassee. So there's some jobs like that he will and would be involved with. So I think he was at the top of the list. You know, to me, the X factor is Jimbo Fisher. Now, Jimbo's been out of it. This is not – he didn't just get fired. But there's so many openings out there right now. You think someone is going to take a shot on him, a guy who's won a national title, who won pretty consistently at Florida State. And in his defense, even though it ended badly at A&M, during the COVID year in 20, they had a really good football team and probably should have been in the playoff over Notre Dame that year. So, you know, he's proven in a couple of different places that he's a good coach. So to me, it'll be fascinating to see, you know, if he gets a shot somewhere. And then Bobby Petrino at Arkansas. Does Arkansas keep him and sort of turn that program over to him full time? I think they're better, or they played better since he's been the interim. They still haven't won, though. And I think he's going to have to win a game or two, you know, before he gets that shot full time. I don't know that that's an absolute requirement, but I think it certainly would help. So, you know, those are some names. I don't know about Hugh Freeze. We'll see. You know, I think it's been well chronicled. Hugh's, you know, dealing with cancer now. I think it's in remission now, but he plans to have the surgery in January. So I don't know what that would mean for him next year if somebody were interested. So those are some of the, you know, the main names. And then Mike Gundy. You know, Mike was at Oklahoma State forever. That's his school as a player, assistant, and a head coach. I think he's still got some. I think Mike still, if he gets the right situation and they invest and are willing to spend some money, I think Mike still has his fastball. And he certainly would be somebody that if I were looking to sort of rebuild a little bit and had some cash that he can really go in and build a roster, that I would be interested in.
Chris Lowe of On3 joining us here in the AAA heating our phone lines. Let's bring this locally to Columbia now. Shane Beamer moving on from offensive coordinator Mike Shula on Sunday. And with all these jobs being open, guess what? That's a lot of offensive coordinators are either going to be taking jobs or going into these new positions as offensive coordinators at these other schools. Once new head coaches get hired, how attractive does the South Carolina offensive coordinator position stack up to these other jobs?
Well, it's going to be hard. I don't think it's impossible, but you know, you fired 2-year offensive staff guys in the season. You know, clearly it's been substandard for the Gamecocks on offense this year. So, you know, if you can't finish this thing out, and I'm not saying that Carolina won't be able to do that, but if you can't, and you go into next season, then that's a critical season for Shane and the program. How many established OCs, quote unquote, are going to come in? I do think that's a hard hire. Now, that doesn't mean they won't get somebody good, or they won't get somebody that, you know, can help them get back on track offensively. But it won't be easy. You know, you've had a couple different guys calling plays, and I don't know. Again, I haven't the last 2 days. I mean, Shane hasn't said really who's going to finish out the season calling plays, has he?
Not officially, and they're on a bye, so we don't have a presser today.
Yeah. So, I mean, to me, that will be interesting to see who that is, and then what he does in the off season. Generally, when you start firing coaches on your staff, and it's not, again, this is not a given, then that means that you feel pressure, there's pressure outside that, hey, you better fix this and fix it in a hurry. There's no way, let me say this, there's no way that there should really be any consideration given to firing Shane Beamer right now. I mean, he won 9 games in the regular season. You guys have been around that program. I grew up in that state. In the last 40 years, 2 guys have won 9 games in the regular season in Carolina. Shane and a guy by the name of Steve Spurrier. So he has proven, and a couple of years earlier, the way they were able to battle, playing 4 quarterbacks, one of them a GA coach, that he can get Carolina to a position where they're winning games. Now, to be able to sustain that over 2, 3, 4 seasons in a row, that's the hard part, and I think that's where the leadership at South Carolina needs to sit down and decide, is he the guy to do that? And if not, is there anybody out there realistically that's any better qualified to do it than him? But to me, it'd be asinine to push him out after this year. Next year's a big year that I think we all would agree that against what's going to be a hard schedule, that they need to show improvement, certainly on offense. With a new quarterback, I don't see Sellers coming back, and he hasn't had nearly the year that everybody thought he would. But, I'm probably guilty of this, guys. I looked at the team, not just Carolina, but Florida, Texas, some of these other schools that had big-time quarterbacks coming back, Lagway at Florida. Probably didn't do my due diligence in looking who they had around them. And maybe we all were sort of mesmerized by the way Lenore's finished last season. They just weren't great around him this year on offense, and that showed up.
Chris, appreciate the insight. Good stuff as always, and we'll probably be talking to you again down the line.
Okay, guys. Thanks for having me on. You guys have a great week.
Absolutely. You too. Again, Chris Lowe there of On3 joining us on the AAA Heating and Air phone lines. We'll come back, talk about the college football playoff top 25 ranking set to release for the first time tonight. Coming up next here on the Garnet Trust Tower, presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating on The Game.
All right, everyone, let's tell you about another one of our great partners here on the program. It's our friends over at Classic Roofing, classicroofingsc.com. That's where you can go to learn more. Joe Reeder, Max Sawyer, local, reliable company for families that live right here in the Midlands. So if you've been thinking about repairing your roof, if you've got some issues, if you know that you need a new roof, if you've got a question as to whether or not you need a new roof, or you want to get somebody, again, local and reliable to take a look at it, reach out to Classic Roofing. They're here for all your roofing needs. They can do residential for your home, commercial for your business, inspections, installations, replacements, and repairs. That's classicroofingsc.com, a reliable GAF certified residential roofing contractor. On their website, classicroofingsc.com, you can use their virtual design tool to even visualize what your new roof could look like on your home. Solutions, no nonsense, classicroofingsc.com or 803-590-7870.
All right, welcome back in. It is the Garnet Trust Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. It's our Chris Clark, Jack Veltri with you on your Tuesday here on the game. Busy Tuesday. Of course, men's basketball tipping off their season tonight at 7 o'clock. But simultaneously, as that's getting started, we're also going to have the first release of this year's college football playoff top 25 rankings, which, of course, do help set the field for the 12-team playoff coming up here in a little over a month's time. Where are you guys at, like, excitement level for first rankings? Do you care? No, Jack, you're obviously going to be over at CLA covering men's basketball, so you won't see them until after the fact. Like, Chris, is disappointment television for you? How do you take in the first rankings?
I just hope the music's the same.
Okay.
You know, the entrance music. I love it.
I think it sets the scene pretty good.
No, not right now.
No.
Doesn't mean enough yet.
Now, if Carolina had the potential to be in the top 25, obviously we'd want to know where they're at, but does that, like, increase your excitement level of, like, hey, Carolina might be 18th or 17th or something like that?
Then you watch. Yeah, then you watch. Definitely the fact that, you know, the local team is not in that mix at this point, it does diminish it. But, no, will I pay attention to it? Yeah, but, like, is it something I'm, going to order some wings for and sit down and appointment viewing? Not really. No.
It's not quite like Selection Sunday for men's basketball.
No, not even close. Not this early.
No, it's same here. Even if I did have time to watch it while I was at men's basketball tonight, I don't even know if I really would. I'm sure I'll look at Twitter and see that it pops up, but no, this is not something that I'm going to be watching. Mainly because even if South Carolina were in the rankings, we still have another month until we get to the final rankings. But it will be interesting. One thing I am interested in seeing with this is if there's how much variation there is compared to the AP poll. We talk about the AP poll all the time and how some don't feel like it matters at all, but it does have some influence on how the CFP looks at this point in the year. I'm just interested to see how similar or different the rankings look on those two platforms.
I'm interested to see as well, and we know this year they said, hey, we got a different set of criteria. We're going to look more at your quality of wins, strength of record, all that kind of stuff, which I kind of thought they were doing anyway, but they've made an emphasis to make that a more important part of the criteria coming up this year, where, okay, just because you're, say, 11-1 in the ACC doesn't necessarily mean you're better than, say, a 9-3 SEC team or something like that. Like, those kind of variations that we're going to be interested in exploring. And what I've noticed this year in the AP poll is I feel like a lot of people at the AP poll have voted that way, where there have been radical swings, teams jumping up really far and teams dropping really far after just an extra week of play because of the quality of a win or a loss and those kind of things. So I think that's kind of setting the table for what to expect from the committee this year. And the way that I've always understood it is every week is supposed to be a tear down from scratch ranking where, you're supposed to be able to have huge jumps and huge swings because one team in one game can show you something more significant than they had in maybe the prior 3 weeks or something along those lines. So I'm interested to see where they set the table at tonight and how differently things change week to week compared to years past.
Yeah, you look at the AP, where did Texas start, Tyler? You have a photographic memory.
They were one. They were the preseason number one.
In the AP. Mm-hmm. Several weeks later, they're not in the thing.
Right.
Now, you pull it up, they're 13th.
Mm-hmm.
Because, they're 7-2. They're still in the mix.
They did just beat a top 10 team.
They did just beat a top 10 team on the road. Game day was there. So, I think it just illustrates the parity. If you're sitting there voting in the college football, if you're on the college football playoff committee, there were some tough decisions that had to be made last year. Like, you're sitting there right now, it's like, who's even good? There's a bunch of good teams. That's not what I'm saying. It's almost like either you got a few teams that are no doubters, right? You've got, obviously, Ohio State, Indiana, Texas A&M, the teams that are undefeated.
Yeah.
And you got other teams in there that, are one-loss teams, Bama, Georgia, Oregon, Ole Miss. You got Texas Tech, BYU's also undefeated. I should have mentioned them at 8-0, played one less game, but they're 8-0. You've got teams like that are obvious, but once you get past that, it's like just the amount of parity, that's why it's so fun this year.
Yep.
Even you're sitting there watching the Vandy, Texas game, and Texas is running away with it, you think. And then you look up, Vandy scored, 3 straight touchdowns.
3-point game.
And it's a 3-point game by the time the thing is over. So you got Indiana number 2. You got Virginia, who thought about firing Tony Elliott. They hung with it. They're 8-1. They're sitting there number 12. Just parity all up and down this thing, which is, you never know week to week what's going to happen. But it's really hard to slot these teams. And you do, like you said, Tyler, you kind of got to tear it down and start over just about every week.
Now, I do wonder with tonight, though, are there any surprises with the top 25, much less with the top 10? I mean, I feel like the AP has done a pretty good job of giving us an inclination of what the top 10 looks like. I think Ohio State, Bama, Indiana, A&M, teams like that are all going to be right up there towards the top. But I do wonder where some of these other teams may fall. Where does Texas come in after picking up that big win over Vanderbilt? What about Miami now that they've dropped 2 straight games? I mean, where does Notre Dame fall in all of this now that they've picked up their season after losing the first 2 games of the year?
I think something that is going to be interesting to see the debate on this. Could Indiana be number 1? Indiana went on the road and beat the team that's number 6 in the AP poll in Oregon. That is one of the best wins of the entire year so far. Yes, Ohio State beat Texas. Now Texas kind of dropped off after that, and they've come back to life a little bit, but it's hard to argue, and I think Alabama has the best overall win, but they do have one loss against Florida State. But of the undefeated teams, I think Indiana has the best win, beating Oregon on the road. You could make a case they could be the number 1 team tonight.
Ohio State probably gets the nod because they're Ohio State.
Probably, which, again...
There's a case, though.
Yeah, there's a case to be made, at least.
It's not, we shouldn't be, shocked.
Sure.
If Indiana's number 1. Yeah.
Yeah, and look, I think... It's not supposed to have a carryover from year to year, but I think, defending national champion that hasn't even been tested by anybody in their stratosphere so far this year probably does get the nod. But you can make a case that Indiana could possibly be the number 1 team when it's all released tonight. And, Jack, you bring up a good point with the Miami thing, because they have 2 losses. Now their 2 losses are worse than the 2 losses to Notre Dame, but they're head-to-head. Right? They have the head-to-head victory over Notre Dame to start the year. Notre Dame's lost to the number 3 team in the AP poll in Texas A&M. So their overall resume is better, but if it comes down to splitting hairs, and these 2 teams are, if Miami is able to run the table and end up 10-2 and Notre Dame does the same thing, do you give the nod to a Miami team that beat Notre Dame, or do you say, well, Notre Dame's done a whole lot better in these other games regardless of the head-to-head, and we're going to put them ahead of you?
So, look at the AP poll. Miami's 18th right now in the AP. I think you put Notre Dame right now ahead of Miami, even with the head-to-head. I mean, also, let's look at Notre Dame has some pretty good wins on the schedule besides losing to Miami at the beginning of the year. They're also going to get a pretty good Navy team this weekend, which should be, help that resume a little bit for Notre Dame. As long as Notre Dame wins out, they're going to be in, no doubt about it. But Miami's definitely slipped lately. I mean, lost 2 games in a row. I mean, I think that should be enough to definitely drop them a little bit further. Personally, I think they're going to be probably the first team, or maybe even the second team outside the top 12 here.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, and we'll get that graphic of here's what the playoff would look like as of right now if we use these rankings. And again, another month of football to be played, but these are the rankings that finally matter. And yes, the AP poll does not have an influence, but the next 4 weeks are we really kind of figure out who's going to be where and setting the table for what's hopefully going to be a fun 12-team playoff this year. We'll see. We'll come back. We'll wrap up the hour, hit the oddities of college football. What weird things happened over the weekend in both college and high school football? I have an entry for that as well. It is the Garnet Trust Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating on your Tuesday on the Game. All right, welcome back in. It is the Garnet Trust Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. Tyler Akers, Clark, Jack Beltry, wrapping up the hour here on your Tuesday. It is time, as always, for the oddities of college football as we point out weird things that happen across week number 10 of the sport. And we'll start with the Oklahoma and Tennessee game. Now, I didn't notice this when Oklahoma was here a couple weeks ago. I'm assuming he was wearing the same kind of pants. Tate Sandell, their kicker, has the shortest football pants I've ever seen in my life. And these football pants upset Kirk Herbstreit so much during the broadcast, he wanted him penalized for them. These things look like essentially bike shorts. They are like mid-thigh, which I guess for kicking, that gives you, more flexibility, swing, whatever. But and I know Preston Thorne has gone on his own rants about this. We've really changed what football pants are from a pad standpoint, a length standpoint, a lot over the years.
It was odd that Herbstreit was so offended by that.
Yeah, why was he so offended by that?
Yeah, kind of a weird hill to die on, but nonetheless, I will admit I have not gone back and looked through, the NCAA football manual, which is like 1 million pages.
Right.
Or the rule book for NCAA football to see, what are the parameters.
Because the NFL is really strict about those kind of things.
Oh, yeah. The
college
NFL
football's not.
No.
If your socks are the wrong length in the NFL, you're getting fined.
Yeah, can't do any of that. College football, never heard as much about it. You got the flip side. You got our guy Maurice Brown II bringing back the neck roll.
Yep.
I mean, who doesn't love that, right?
Yeah.
Bring back the neck roll, popularize it, put it back in the canon for college football. But yeah, it was weird that Herbie was so upset by that.
Jack,
I don't get it.
Jack, how short were your football pants?
Let's just say, the knee pads being at his thighs. My knee pads were over my knees, like a normal.
As they should be. They're called knee pads.
I think it's so funny how he's a kicker too. I mean, how often do you see a kicker wearing knee pads, wearing a girdle? I mean, those sorts of things. I just don't. I don't know. I think it's a little strange how short these are. Don't get me wrong. It's fine. I see receivers and DBs and guys like that wearing their knee pads not over their knees. They pull them above their knees. But I just think this looks a little too much for me.
Let's take a trip down to FCS for this next one because when Idaho was playing Northern Arizona, this happened.
Had time, but the lights went out.
And he caught the ball. He caught the ball in the dark. He literally caught. That is I've never seen that in my life.
The rule in the field is that the light went out in the middle of the play. The try will be replayed.
Yeah, I thought so.
So Northern Arizona scores a touchdown to put themselves up 27-26, about 8.5 minutes to go against Idaho, and they're attempting to make it a 3-point game by going for 2. Northern Arizona plays indoors. They have a roof over their football stadium, and quite literally, right as the quarterback is releasing the ball, the lights go out. Now, the receiver caught it in the end zone. You just can't see it. So they did make them replay the try. But, yeah, lights going out mid-play on a very pivotal play at that. That's a first. That's a new one.
Did they get it the next play?
I actually need to look that up. I'm not sure if they did or not.
That'd be crazy.
That's on me. I probably should have looked that up.
Remember the Super Bowl when they had the
Yeah, it's because Beyonce.
Yeah, that's
Beyonce knocked the lights out.
Yeah, it's a conspiracy.
Yeah.
I
have never seen anything like that before. How often does stuff like that ever happen? I mean, that's certainly got to be the oddity of the week right there.
Let's see. They did end up getting the 2-point try on the second try. They did lose the game, though, 35-32.
It's because the lights went out.
Yeah.
Well, that cracked me up that it was the ruling on the field as the lights went out. It's thank you.
That's not the ruling. That's
we
what
didn't
happened.
Notice. Yeah, we didn't
saw
notice.
it.
We got to go to the replay booth to see if the lights went out or not, or if it's just a.
Yeah, that was a unique one for sure. Last one here. We're going to spin over to high school football. TL Hanna taking on Greenville. Literally only seconds left on the clock. Greenville up 24-21, and this happened.
He puts his foot into this. Let's see what kind of return Hanna has. Time has expired, but here is a man loose on the return. Can Hanna break their hearts in Greenville tonight? Absolutely. The Yellow Jackets of T.L. Hanna return the kick with no time left.
That call via 94.9 WALH and the Fighting Chris Clarks.
Yes.
Do indeed win the game, wrapping up a 9-1 regular season. How about that?
Yeah, shout out. That was I saw that one going around this weekend on social media. Outstanding stuff. Caden Morrell, congrats to him. Don't know why, if you're Greenville, think about a different type of kick than the one you did. That was odd, but hey, we'll take it. We'll take it.
That is a finish of all finishes right there.
Pretty short kick, to be honest. I get what they're trying to do with minimal time left, but
I don't. You got to squib that one, I think.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, it was kind of just a line drive kick. It wasn't even really a squib.
Yeah.
Chris, I did not know you went to TL Hanna, though. That is a cool fun fact.
Yes. Have you ever seen the movie Radio? That's based on radio from the high school.
Well, and people always reference Radio when they talk about TL Hanna, but I go, oh, no, Chris Clark went there.
That's and then they're like, who is that?
That's the first line for me.
If I walked in there, they'd be like, you went here?
Your movie's coming. Don't worry.
I didn't know. Yeah.
Like, no, he's a writer for Gamecock Central. You know him. Yeah, Fighting Chris Clarks. But there you go. Oddities of college football. Jack, we'll talk to you tomorrow.
All right, man. See you then.
We'll jump back into the Mike Shula conversation coming up as we dive into the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs on your Tuesday on the Game.
As we close out the program here, let's tell you about our friends over at Krantz Cooling and Heating. And guys, actually great timing to talk about the fine folks over at Krantz Cooling and Heating, because just this week had a problem with our heat as soon as we turned it on downstairs. First time of the season, there was an issue, wasn't kicking on, making a loud noise. Hit up our guy Justin Krantz, general manager over there. He sent someone out the same day. Got the problem all fixed. We're up and running. We're good to go. Whether you need maintenance, repairs, or new installations for your home or your business, trust me, you can trust Krantz Cooling. Krantz, KrantzCooling.com. Since 1983, that family-owned business has been helping families and businesses around the Midlands with any of their HVAC needs. Again, check them out, KrantzCooling.com. You can check out their Google reviews, text them with questions, schedule an appointment, or you can give them a call, 803-672-3224, Krantz Cooling.
11 o'clock on your Tuesday morning. Welcome in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West Chris along with you here. I asked the same question to Jack at the start of the 9 o'clock hour, so I'll pose the same question to you as well. Usually on Tuesdays, we're still kind of talking about the game from the weekend, but obviously yesterday was more of the focus on the Mike Shula firing that came on Sunday, and that dominated our discussion yesterday. So extra day to kind of marinate on this. Talked about it yesterday, obviously. Like, what's the thought a few more days out of how all this went down and where we're at with the offensive coordinator position now?
I mean, the timing is obviously different than it's been in the past for Shane Beamer. And so, quick refresher, I think it was January going into Beamer's first year, early January of 2021. He retains Mike Bobo, allows Mike Bobo to bring in his own offensive line coach, which is Will Friend. Both of them bolt for Auburn not long after that. And so then you make a hire. Next time, when Marcus Satterfield goes to Nebraska, you've got a postseason hire. Then after the 2024 season, you've got a postseason hire because Dow Loggins takes the job at App State. This time, it's a different situation because, on one hand, you can say, okay, you're getting a head start on this thing. On the other hand, we were talking about this earlier, Tyler, you've got a whole bunch of open head jobs at schools who are also going to need offensive coordinators, whether it's somebody coming in from a school who's going to bring a guy, going to make an outside hire, whatever it may be. So when we're thinking about the head coaching market being crowded, it's kind of the same thing for the OC situation. So I would say, is Shane Beamer doing some work on this front, given that it's the bye week? I would think so. Is the timeline still probably after the season? I would also think so.
Gotta be.
But you also have to bear in mind you've got some important dates. You've got the early signing period, which is December 3rd through 5th this year. And then you got the transfer portal window, which is going to open up early January and run for a couple weeks. And so the sooner the better. But I think if you're, don't wait around and hold your breath. Okay, is there going to be a new OC on Wednesday? No, probably not. But look, I mean, just generally to go back to it, marinating on it for a couple days. I mean, something that was going to be done at some point. Do it now. Get it out of the way. Try to get better over these last 3 games, which, by the way, you're going to need to sweep to get to a bowl game, obviously. And then go ahead and get started on this process of trying to get this thing turned around.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Put publicly, hey, we're focused on this year, focused on this season, not looking past anything with this team. That's what you got to say, I think. Privately, you have to at least be doing some due diligence, right? And, I think this is certainly, like, almost all these guys that are assistants at this point, they have agents now as well. So I think a big part of this current period, maybe it's not even you, Shane Beamer, having to do all the legwork. It is you putting some people you highly trust on the trail of who are some names that make sense. Let's reach out to their people. Because you also have to have some tact about this.
Yeah.
You have to have a little respect of, hey, they're focused on their seasons, right? And so I think it is reach out to agent season. It is, hey, is your guy interested in talking? If they are, when makes sense for y'all? And kind of just approaching it from that standpoint. And so I think for Beamer, too, you really want to be formulating what's important to me, who are maybe – there are probably some guys he already has in mind, but also we know the importance of this hire. You really don't, in my opinion, you don't want to cut off anybody at this early stage. You want to have an open mind. Doesn't have to be somebody you've worked with. Doesn't have to be somebody you even know anybody, that has worked with them.
Yeah.
I think to me it's got to be who is the best hire, who is the best fit. And we talked about this on the podcast, Chris. It does not necessarily have to be a big name. We get caught up in the big name thing. Give me 15 offense coordinators just off the top of your head. Like offense coordinators, there's a bunch of them doing very well.
Sure.
That random person off the street ain't never even heard of them. So It doesn't have to be somebody you know. It just has to be the right hire. And it's important, man. So I think you got to be doing some due diligence, even if it's a little bit of just kind of delegating to other people to start gathering information. Hey, let's start with some different metrics. Who are the top 25 in the country for the last 5 years, at that position? Because it's kind of funny. I just stumbled, doing our own kind of research and searching around. I stumbled across some search I put in Google, gave me here are the top 10 offensive coordinators. And it was from like 2 or 3, 4 years ago or something. And half of them are fired.
Oh, yeah, flamed out.
Yeah.
Top 10 office coordinators in the country and this was not just some random, it was like a national website. And so you sometimes see guys that are phenomenal. Mm-hmm. Even at it's not just can they step up from FCS to FBS or group to power. Literally, like, they've done it at the highest level at the best conference. Well, they go to this other place, just doesn't work out.
Well, so. Look at Garrett Riley just up the street. I mean,
he was on the list.
Yeah, the Clemson offense is. I mean, I know they scored like 45 points the other day against Duke, but like it's been bad this year, and they were supposed to be one of the best offensive units in the country. So even that flashy hire has not worked out the way that they thought it would. So it is. Any hire you make is going to be a risk, right? There's upside, there's downside, and you got to let it play out and see what happens. But it is kind of funny because I think we focus more on the head coaching cycle when it comes to hiring. And again, we're going to look at this cycle with all these jobs that came open that we talked about with Chris Lowe in the last hour. And 5 years from now, half those guys could be fired and looking for head coaches again. But it happens even at a higher clip with coordinators because coordinators get an even shorter shelf life when it comes to proving yourself at a spot before you either go somewhere else or you get fired there, as we saw with Mike Shula only getting 10 games here before they moved on from him. So there's even more turnover when you're talking about coordinator spots. And yeah, guys that can be looking like the best coordinator in the country go to the bottom of the barrel after 2-3 years at a place that it doesn't work out at.
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking about, Wes, I would take a guess, if that list was long enough ago, Mike Yurcich was probably on it. Mike Gundy found him for Oklahoma State by Googling stats. And he's like, wow, that school, which was Shippensburg,
yep,
is killing it.
Shout out to Brent Grimes.
So he's like, yeah, that's right. So he's like, let me look at this guy. Goes there, does very well, parlays that into getting a job at Ohio State, parlays that into getting a job at Texas, parlays that into getting the Penn State OC job. And then in season 3, he's fired. Now he's at Youngstown State. And so even that is like, all right, you've got this. Because a lot of people say, hire the up-and-comer. Hire the up-and-comer. You can hire that guy, and he might do well for you. He might not. He might do well at your school and not as well as another. Like, it's kind of like head coaches, right? We all like to pretend that we absolutely know the answer. Yeah, if you plug this guy into this school, he's absolutely going to win. If you plug this guy into this school, he's absolutely not going to win. And there are plenty of examples of it going the other way. So, yeah, I think just finding the guy that fits what you need to do offensively, I don't know who that is. I think we can all pick out some qualities that they need, which I think a lot of those are obvious. I do think this time around, one of the things that could make people feel better, not that it means it's going to work ultimately, you're right, Wes. It doesn't have to be like a big name. I do think, I get the sense, that's probably the better way to say it, that it'll probably be someone who has more of a collegiate track record. Like, is that fair? Because you look at the other hires, like Marcus Satterfield came from the NFL, but he had been with Matt Rule at Temple and Baylor, so 2 smaller schools. And you can argue about, they had some good years there, but you can, some of the statistics maybe weren't great. Dow Loggins had obviously been an OC in the NFL for most of his career. And then Mike Shula has been an NFL OC also, but it had been a while, I think 2019, since he had actually called plays. Yep. So the point I'm getting at is I do feel like, I get the sense, maybe not for sure, that it'll be a guy who has more of like a college track record running an offense.
There is I think a thing we're seeing with the national, with the head coaching hires too, and we've seen it at South Carolina at times. I think we saw it with maybe the men's basketball hire. Hey, I want a guy who has been a head coach before. I want to hire a sitting head coach, and you always you don't always see it, but in certain, I guess, hiring processes, when you start reading like the intel pieces, you'll see, hey, what's important to this AD and president and BOT in a given situation. And sometimes one of the little just kind of check marks is, hey, we want a guy who's been a head coach. Well, how many of the just like top teams in the country right now is it that they hired a sitting head coach, and how many of them hired like a power four, like stole a power four from another power four right now, just of the top teams in the country?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Not many.
Right.
I mean, you look now. Granted, the counter argument will be, well, hey, Wes, some of those programs are already in pretty dang good shape already. That is true. But in my experience, when a guy takes over, the fall, if they're just not the guy, if they're not capable, the fall off actually happens pretty quick. Like we have seen that.
Yeah.
And so really, and I know that there's no guarantees. It's not necessarily hire the guy who has been a head coach before. It is hire the best possible coach you can go get, whatever that criteria, however you determine to find that person is obviously the part about this that makes it difficult. But, I mean, Ryan Day, he was a coordinator, not a head coach. Dan Lanning, he was a coordinator, not a head coach. Kirby Smart, he was a coordinator, not a head coach. Now, Cignetti, obviously, was a head coach, but not at a major school yet. So, I mean, the top teams right now in the country are not teams where you said, we just had to go get this huge name. Those were names that we knew, but they hadn't done it as head coaches yet. So you're trying to find the best coach. They maybe just haven't had that opportunity yet to be a head coach. Of course, talking not about South Carolina at this point.
So how attractive is this offensive coordinator job for the candidates that are going to be interested? We'll dive into that coming up next as the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs rolls along on your Tuesday on the Game. Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler with Chris along with you on your Tuesday here on The Game. Continuing to discuss the fallout of the firing of Mike Shula on Sunday and what this means for South Carolina football going forward. And there's no denying, as we mentioned yesterday, this is the most important hire of the Beamer tenure because, again, he's going to be going into next year with questions around his job security if the season does not go well. So you need an offensive coordinator that can kick things back into the right gear and get this offense back to where it needs to be. But I go back to the conversation, Chris, that we had with Chris Lowe in the last hour of On 3 about what the attractiveness of this job is, because you've got a lot of competition. And yes, every year there's always competition of coaches being hired and fired, coordinators moving around, but none like this year. And again, all those places that look for new head coaches are going to bring in new offensive coordinators and their assistants and all that kind of stuff. So you're definitely facing a challenge trying to make yourself stand out from the pack in terms of who wants to come here. And obviously money plays a factor in that as well, depending on how much you can pay for a coordinator. But the question still begs, how attractive is this offensive coordinator job compared to some of the other ones that are going to be filled in the offseason?
Yeah, well, hey, right now we don't even know what the other ones are going to be at this point. I do think, so here's the thing. And again, there's going to be, Lord knows how many OC spots open up. It's really a conversation that's hard to have right now. A lot of times, if you're a successful head coach and let's say you get hired by LSU, there's a decent chance that whoever gets hired to be their head coach is going to try to bring their OC with them.
Mm-hmm.
So, you aren't necessarily looking at, hey, does Penn State have to hire an OC? Does LSU have to hire an OC? Yes, they do, but it's not necessarily going to be like from a pool of candidates. It may just be that their guy follows them. Now, of course, maybe the OC of that particular coach, wherever they're leaving, maybe they get the head job at wherever that head coach just left to take the LSU. So now LSU is hiring an OC. And the thing that provides for an OC is a reset, right? Like you have you're starting, you have at least, well, these days, how long's the honeymoon? You have 3 games of a honeymoon?
Yeah, you can give you half a season. Used
to be you got a season at least, but now not so much. And I do think, certainly, let's just be honest, would it have been easier this past offseason hiring an outside OC? Sellers definitely back, coming off a 9-win season, right on the edge of the playoff. Yeah, 100%. Now, is it still going to be a very attractive job? You're talking about, first of all, you're talking about SEC, where the ability for an SEC school to go out and pay your coordinators, that in the Big Ten are going to just dwarf everywhere else. So I think that's a big part of it. Is Sellers back? Like, I know Sellers has not played up to his standard this year, has not played up to what we thought he would. But if you're an OC and you believe in your scheme, you believe in your ability to put players in the right position, you were going, man, if I can, A, get that guy back and then elevate him, B, he can make you look really good as an OC when things are off schedule, when things don't work, when you've got a bad call on, he breaks that tackle and runs for a first down. So I do think there's going to be some high value in coming in, having the opportunity to coach him. And this part, I don't know if this part matters a ton because everybody, for the most part, has some young talent on their roster at quarterback. But I do think there's some young guys, specifically Cutter Woods, potentially Landon Duckworth coming in. There are some young guys coming up in this quarterback room that I think are pretty valuable to a future coach as well.
Yeah, I think if we look at it in terms of how attractive is it and what are any drawbacks, I mean, the reasons that you mentioned, Wes, are very valid. SEC, if you come in and you, as we laid out in the last segment, a really good path to being a head coach at a big program is to be a coordinator, offensive or defensive coordinator, at another big school. And, of course, SEC and Big Ten schools about as big as you can get in college football. And so you've got that. You've got the salary part of it, right? Even if, we've seen a little bit more of a trend, not that this will necessarily happen here. I think some guys who are sitting head coaches maybe at the G5, FCS level could be considered. I mean, Kane Womack, who's Alabama's defensive coordinator, was a head coach. So I'm out. Chip Kelly did the same thing. Head coach at UCLA. I'm gonna go call plays last year at Ohio State. FCS head coaches, if you are a pretty successful one, you're doing well, but you're making, 250, 300, 400, something like that. If it's a guy like that, you can not have to worry about retaining your roster at a G5 or FCS level. They get picked off a lot. You don't have to worry about all the stuff. You just go call ball plays and quintuple your salary. So that's another kind of what? Quintuple. Quadruple, quintuple,
Okay.
Quadruple's 4. What's quintuple?
5.
5, okay.
Yeah.
What would 6 be?
Sextuple?
Sextuple, I think. But I don't remember
is
what
that, is that a real word?
Don't go to 7. I don't know what 7 is.
No, don't Google that.
Yeah, well, we won't Google that. But that's true. But now, if you're looking at, because when we were talking to Chris Lowe, he mentioned it's going to be hard. Well, why is it going to be hard? Well, in addition to the coaching market that you guys were just talking about, you can't hide from this. It is a high-pressure situation next year. Okay, and Chris said it. I've had some people I'm talking to about the coaching search mention it too. Hey, you're walking into a situation with some uncertainty. And I do think you have to know that. It is a year that's important to win. Now, the other side of that is you look at it and say, all right, just the year before, Shane Beamer won 9 games. You've got the transfer portal. Is Lenore Sellers back? That's going to be a big piece that everybody's going to ask who talks to Shane Beamer about this job. What's the portal strategy? What's your NIL look like? Can we go out and get players? Oh, I have some players I can bring with me who will help us out a lot, right? Like that is all part of this. And so if you find the right guy who's confident and he feels good about the situation, it doesn't have to be, you can very quickly make it stable. Because I'm going to tell you, if Shane Beamer next year at South Carolina wins 9, 10 games, makes the playoff, who knows, he's probably going to get another extension. Yeah. And now everybody feels great.
Yeah. Yes, Wes.
I have a question for the class.
Sure, go ahead.
How in today's era, like we've seen this trend. It's worked at Vandy, worked at Oklahoma. In today's college football world, how valuable is having that OC? Maybe he's got a relationship. Doesn't even have to be a quarterback. If Lenora Sellers is coming back, maybe he's got a stud running back. Maybe he's got a stud receiver that just loves playing in the offense. Mm-hmm. How valuable, and I'm not saying this is why you should make the decision, but if you're deciding between coordinator A and B and you need a tiebreaker, that stud might follow him. Does that factor in at all?
I think it real could. And again, Vandy's a perfect example of that with Tim
They
Beck
took like an entire roster.
They took most of New Mexico State, but the highlights
Oklahoma.
are Diego Pavia and Eli Stowers, and that's obviously worked out really well. Oklahoma, same kind of deal there. So yeah, that is something that's kind of a newer trend in college football now, because you have that ability to say, hey, well, how are you? And wink, wink, when that portal opens up in a couple weeks here, we'll just go get the guys that you want to get from your prior school and build the roster that way.
Isn't it funny nobody even blinks at that anymore?
It's smart. Makes sense.
It's smart, but it was kind of considered to be shady at one point.
Yeah.
Like, just follow me, man. Excuse me? You did what? We just paid you whatever we just paid you to be our OC. Not only are you leaving.
Let's be fair. They don't talk to them until the portal window opens, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like, guys, I'm leaving, but I'll call you in about 3 weeks, and we'll discuss things then. How about that?
I'm going to Vanderbilt. You still have my number.
But not until the portal opens. So we're not allowed to contact each other before that. Don't want to break any rules.
Seriously, was that not considered very shady not that long? Is that considered shady anymore? It doesn't seem like anybody blinks an eye.
Because it's working.
Yeah.
And people are like, oh,
it ain't working for the team that lost those guys.
No, it's not. That's the other side of the coin that you're not as worried about.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, it's going to be interesting to see what transpires here, and again, we're not going to get any hires made until a month from now when the season's effectively over. But something we'll continue to talk about. We'll take a look at buy or sell and see how we did for the Ole Miss game. Coming up next, it is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs on your Tuesday on the Game. Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West, Chris, along with you on your Tuesday here on the game. It's time to recap how buy or sell went over the weekend. We entered the weekend with the three of us, only separated by 2 total points. Wes had 26, I had 25, Chris had 24. How did the standings shake up this past weekend? Start off with buy or sell number 1.
I thought you were in last, Tyler.
Was I in last?
I'm dead serious.
You know what? I was. That's right. You were.
Right.
You.
Tyler.
I reordered them.
Okay.
Yeah,
from last weekend. So I was reading the wrong way.
Did you just order them back correctly?
I've got them ordered back correctly with the updated points.
Make sure.
So as we look back this past weekend, the first question was South Carolina had forced 5 3-and-outs versus Alabama. Ole Miss averaged less than 2 per game. Buy or sell, South Carolina could force at least 4 in the game. We all sold, and we were all correct. They forced just 1 on Saturday. On a day that wasn't Ole Miss's best from a passing standpoint, obviously they ran the ball extremely well, but it wasn't like A-plus Trinidad Chambliss. But
South Carolina was actually really good against them on third downs, right?
Yeah, they didn't have a bunch of 3-and-outs, but I think Ole Miss was 1 for 11 on third down.
Yeah, they didn't convert the first third down until into the third quarter.
Wow.
They started off like 0 for 6, I think.
Yeah.
But they were like hitting those fourth downs, though, too.
Yeah. And
fake punt.
We talked about the aggressiveness of Lane Kiffin. He kind of went back to his old ways a little bit, starting with
I looked bad on that.
The first play of the game. Buy or sell number 2, the South Carolina offense would best its Shula high total of 22 points scored. Obviously, you only got 14 points. Chris was the only one to buy that. So Wes and I got the point on that one. What was your final score prediction? Do you remember? Do you have 24?
Yeah, I had 34-24.
Okay.
Yeah. That's tough. Okay.
It is. Buy or sell number 3, South Carolina will attempt more fourth downs than total punts in the game. They punted 5 times. They attempted only 3 fourth downs. Chris was the only one to sell on that. So you got it correct.
Okay. That's a golf clap.
Yeah. It just made sense that be more aggressive, back up against the wall. Thought they'd go for more. Hopefully not have as many punts, but didn't work out that way.
Yeah.
All right.
Buy or sell number 4, Ty Simpson was 1 of 8 on throws 20-plus yards down the field versus South Carolina. Chambliss was 55% on those throws entering the game. Carolina could hold him to 2 or less. Actually correct. He only had 1. He was 1 for 2 on throws 20-plus yards down the field. He didn't have his best day, obviously. Let's see here. Chris and I were the only ones to buy that and get it correct. Have a pretty good day here, Chris.
1 for 2. I'm trying to. I remember the one. I don't remember another one. Like, I don't remember the miss. I remember the make, if that makes sense. But, yeah, it was not. I mean, Lane Kiffin said on the broadcast, like, Trinidad's got to play better. And so, look, you got South Carolina late. It unraveled a little bit for them defensively. But they obviously weren't getting tons and tons of help from their own offense. Complimentary football, they weren't really able to play it like you wanted to in that game. But they did what you wanted early in that game.
Last question. South Carolina would lead in the fourth quarter. Wes was the only one to buy it. So Chris and I got that one right.
What are you doing?
Which means Chris Clark is now at the top of the standings. 29.
Like
and
okay,
Wes and I are tied at 28 in second. So still only separated by 1 point.
All right. Now, how long are we keeping this thing going? Is it through the regular season?
My plan was all the way through the national championship. Because we can have them for topics for playoffs and all that kind of stuff. So the Monday of the national championship will be the championship of buy or sell for 2025. How about that?
Sounds great. What's the winner get?
We got to figure that part out.
Handshake and a smile. What's the loser get?
Oh, losers. There's going to be 2 losers.
There is.
What if we all tie?
We're a bunch of losers.
We're all losers.
We're all losers.
Not all winners, we're all losers.
There must be a winner. There's no ties.
Okay,
we'll figure out a tiebreaker at the end.
Yeah, well, I'll have to figure out a tiebreaker if it does come down to that. I want to get your thoughts as well. 803-404-6100 Gamecock Sharks on the AAA Heating and Air phone lines wants to talk about the OC position as well as Lenore Sellers. Appreciate your call. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I was calling to talk about Sellers and a couple things that I've noticed over this whole year. I sat back and I thought about a couple different things. And Sellers, his whole football career, whether it be Pop Warner ball or high school ball of 4 years, he came to us with the rec specs on. He sat for a whole year behind Spencer Rattler with rec specs. If you see him outside of football, he's not wearing contacts. He's wearing glasses. And football, college football, especially D1, happens at the speed of light when it's on the field. So I'm thinking when the play is actually happening, breaking down, and he's reading the field and he's looking for everybody, that even like the one play where the running back came out to the swing side and he was pretty much wide open, he had beat the linebacker, and Sellers overthrows him maybe by like 5 or 10 feet. So maybe his eyes aren't adjusting with the contacts and he's not trusting where to place the ball. With 3 games left in the season, it might be smart to maybe go back to the rec specs. He took a lot of flack over a couple sacks that he had taken at the beginning of that season last year that made us want him to switch it over. And maybe that wasn't the best situation for us or for him. And with 3 games to go in the season, I wouldn't mind him putting those rec specs back on to see if that does adjust his eyes out there on the field. Because it doesn't matter who we get as the offensive coordinator. If Sellers comes back and he can't see properly, he can't get the ball to the wide receiver or the tight ends. And it's pretty simple to see when we got a wide open running back on the outside and we can't even connect on that pass. It's pretty sad for us, and it hurt us pretty bad. And then the overshots on the long balls. I think playing with those rec specs might be the way to go with 3 games left in the season, guys.
Appreciate the call there, 803-404-6100. Well, he ditched the rec specs after, was it the Kentucky game last year? It was very early on in the season.
It was the LSU game.
It was the LSU game? Okay.
Yeah,
right.
but that was right after.
Yeah. But, I mean, God, we've seen him play at his best with the contact, so I wouldn't think that'd be rearing its head as a problem now.
Yeah, I mean, trying to think of how to say this. I think everything's on the table.
Sure.
Honestly, at this point, so I don't want to completely. I mean, I thought it was silly when people were saying he needed to ditch the rec specs in the first place, that he couldn't see out of his peripheral vision. I will say this: I wear contacts. There are times when, like right now, I cannot tell that I have contacts in. Like I don't think about it. My vision is fine. There's nothing bothering my eyes right now. There are times when I can't focus on the TV. Like I have to concentrate to see. And it's like the contacts are bothering my eyes, or there's maybe they're fogged up or something. I don't know the technical reason, but there are times where contacts can be disturbing to your eyes. So I don't think that's it, because we saw him play his best ball the final half of last year. We saw him play a great game against LSU the first time he didn't have the specs. I don't know if he ultimately looks at maybe even having corrective laser LASIK surgery. Maybe that, I know a lot of guys have looked into doing that, especially athletes. So I don't know. I mean, I think at this point, yeah, everything's on the table. I kind of doubt that's it, but I don't want to completely rule it out, because I might say that and then he might run out there with the specs on Saturday or next week, and then I look like an idiot. So I don't think that's it, but I won't put anything off the table at this point.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of conversation about that with the peripheral vision and everything last year. And honestly, things seemed to get better after he got rid of them. So I agree, Wes. I tend to think that just the amount of pressure in the games has really affected him. I also think there's just some, like the other night, there were just some uncharacteristic missed throws too. So I think it's just a combination of all those things. And I won't say that the literal vision is no part of it, because I don't know that for sure. I think it's just a lot of the other things that have kind of compounded.
Yeah. How you were there? How was it windy? Was it cold? Was it
extremely cold? And I mean, the wind was whipping.
Even something when you're flipping the ball out, your touch, your feel, especially if you're not used to playing in that. I mean, it sounds like a big old excuse. I'm just kind of workshopping.
Yeah. No, I mean, again, everything's on the table to be asked at this point. So fair question, I guess. But unless we see him roll out there with the rec specs against A&M, I'm assuming he's just going to keep rolling with the contacts going forward. We'll come back and wrap up the hour. Talk a little bit of women's basketballs. They were in action last night, but real quick. Men's basketball gets things rolling tonight, taking on North Carolina A&T. And I have 2 family 4-pack of tickets right now for callers number 3 and 4 at 803-404-6100. Go see Lamont Paris' crew as they get set to start year number 4. Again, callers number 3 and 4 at 803-404-6100. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs here on the game. Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyrus Chris along with you, wrapping up your Tuesday edition of the show. As I mentioned a moment ago, men's basketball in action tonight, taking on North Carolina A&T over at Colonial Life Arena. Tip-offs at 7, pregame coverage starting with Derek and Judge Casey at 6:30 right here on the game. Dawn Staley's crew got their season started last night, taking on Grand Canyon, of course, coached by former assistant Winston Gandy, and they handled their business as expected, 94-54, a game that took forever because I feel like there were 10 million whistles in a game that shouldn't have taken that long. But regardless, Carolina comes out on top of the end as expected, and it was the first opportunity to see in a real game Tanaya Latson, Medina Okote, and some of the new faces to this roster this year that are hopefully going to help this team get back to its goal of being national champions.
Yeah, man, that was great to see. First of all, bringing back a former coach and kind of having that opportunity for Winston Gandy to be here and just be around the program. And I think it's really cool how Dawn kind of always is intentional about things. And certainly the connection there, the respect there, the relationship there had something to do with them, scheduling this matchup. And so it's obviously a much different team. But, hey, South Carolina women's basketball, nobody should count this group out. I think they have obviously a legitimate kind of cornerstone type scorer. You bring in from the transfer portal a big who I think gives you that kind of person down low that you maybe missed a little bit last year, and you bring in the nation's leading scorer. And so you put that with some of your core that is back. You have some veterans. You have Joyce, who's a year older, obviously, and it's going to be a much different looking team, it seems like, but I think still a very, very dangerous team. So I'm pretty excited to see where this thing goes.
It's crazy you look out there, too, and you realize that they don't have two players that until several weeks ago you would have thought they would have had Ashlyn Watkins and Chloe Kitts. Mm-hmm. You think about kind of what could be, but as it's currently made up, still looks like a team that's going to be a really tough out. They have those pieces that they added, Wes, that you mentioned. I think some unique pieces. I was very interested to get a look at Agot McKeer, and man, what a fascinating player she is, right? Like a 6'1" guard, but kind of looks more like a forward. But then you watch her start running. She can shoot from outside. She hit a 3 in the game, hit both her free throws. Intrigued to see how much once they get into like conference play, like how does she factor in? But obviously a good start. I mean, probably overall an expected result for them to roll over this team. Just to be perfectly honest, no disrespect to Grand Canyon.
They can fling some threes though.
They do that. They definitely do that. But, good start for the Gamecocks. Interested to watch this team continue to progress.
Yeah, and again, it seems like Grand Canyon is not going to give you the best look in terms of matching up competition-wise. You'll get Clemson, you'll get Southern Cal in a couple weeks, Duke, Louisville, ranked teams that you're going to see in conference play before you get it, or in non-conference play before you get in the grind of the SEC. And then obviously you're looking out for the usual suspects, the Tennessees, the LSUs, teams like that, to see how they match up. Texas, obviously, Oklahoma, and see how they match up with you. And again, we set high expectations for this team every single year, and obviously hope to see them back in the Final Four and hopefully taking a step forward from where they were a year ago, falling to UConn in the end.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy when a step forward is, hey, win the national title. But
instead of just playing for it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we'll see. I'm very curious to see where this team goes, and very curious to get our first look at South Carolina men's basketball tonight as well.
A lot of excitement. Again, we talked with Tanner Bronson on Friday, and he kind of matched that level of excitement that Coach Paris had when we heard from him after their exhibition the other week. And, yeah, some familiar faces returning and a lot of new faces coming in via the portal. And again, this is a team in NCAA that Jack pointed out earlier is like 353rd in KenPom. So hopefully it's a game that you should be able to win with routine ease. Not always a guarantee. You saw last year against North Florida, but hopefully gets the season started off on the right foot and can back up some of those reasons for being excited that we've heard about this entire offseason.
Yeah, I actually just yesterday went back and I posted our interview with Tanner Bronson on the Gamecock Central YouTube. Man, he was great. You can tell why Lamont Paris trusts him so much. thought we learned a lot from that about this team. If you weren't listening when we had him on last week, I would encourage everyone, shameless plug, to go check it out.
Yeah, good conversation there. And again, that crew coming going to be in action tonight. And shout out to our two winners there on the AAA Indiana phone lines that won tickets to go see them. And now that we're in basketball season, we'll be giving away a lot of tickets. So keep it locked right here and have your opportunity to go out there and see Coach Paris, see Coach Staley, and what teams they have to offer. And much like we're kind of forecasting for Beamer coming up next year, definitely a very important prove-it type of season for Lamont Paris to get this team back into a good standing position as, believe it or not, he's entering year number 4.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I think this team, at least in makeup and in skill set, will look a little bit more like the one 2 years ago. We'll see if a return to the roots of what Paris' system is all about will result in similar number of wins.
Talk about that coming up tomorrow. Halftime show up next. Myself and Bill Gunner as Tuesday rolls along in the game.